Welcome, everyone. This is a momentous day. This is my birthday, July 9th, 2025.
You were born today.
Yes. Yes. Our story begins 34 years ago.
Whoa, you have to go like 6 months prior so you can tell us like the tragic story of your parents as well, please. So.
Oh, believe me, I can. I was a hospital just outside of Atlantic City, New Jersey. A beautiful night by all counts. Two young people, a 26-year-old woman and a 28-year-old man, high school sweethearts. As I say, it was the summer of 1991. The Soviet Union was in the process of falling. Computers were not really a major thing in people's lives. They were utilized at work, and nerds utilized them for fun, but normal people did not have to worry about them. So it was a very idyllic time. It was an exciting time because the couple were welcoming their first child into the world, a young boy. And it was a beautiful birth. It was not painful. A heavy amount of drugs were used, which had no long-term effects. The child was born, and reportedly a crimson comet creased across the sky at the child's first wail, which in olden times would have thought to have been foretelling, great upheaval, tragedy, or political change. But on this night seemed to herald a new era. The Cold War was ending. We were entering the go-go 90s, and a very special boy was brought into this world. The parents held the boy. Everything was looking good. One of the parents was holding a deep secret, but that's a story for another day. But for the time, everything was looking very good. And so we jump 34 years later, and in here now the boy is a man, and it is the boy's birthday, and the boy is in control of the podcast for today, for one day only. And the boy could use that power for great evil, but you girls are in luck because the boy is a benevolent dictator. And the boy has chosen 2 movies to give you the option to select from, both of which are fantastic films. I would be happy to watch either and talk about them with you. I was trying to think of how to describe them without spoiling them, which some people say is an issue that I have. So I thought
impossible.
What I'll do is I'll describe the names of the movies to the listeners, but for the 2 of you, I will post images of the movies in our general chat. And
for the three of us,
can't believe this.
Jake cannot count. The boy never learns.
I do really appreciate the real Cormac McCarthyism that you kind of like fell into at the end there. Really great.
Yes, totally intentional. I love Cormac McCarthy. I have Blood Meridian sitting on my desk that I got like a year and a half ago now. I still have not started it. I keep telling myself if I go on a trip, I'm going to bring it, but I just haven't had a chance yet.
Is it a good trip book? I don't know.
I'm about to go on a bachelor party in a couple of weeks, and I don't want to be the guy reading Blood Meridian in the corner while everybody else is partying.
I mean, actually, maybe reading Blood Meridian at a bachelor party is actually the perfect environment.
Actually, yeah. Considering the content, it's kind of, there's some parallels. Socially.
Actually, do that, and then come back and tell me what your thoughts were.
A very interesting social experiment, and I have someone to blame if I do that. People are looking at me cockeyed.
I'm sorry, I have to do this. My podcast co-host said I had to.
Yeah, you're lucky I'm here for this bachelor party. My podcast is my main priority, and this is a subsidiary experiment off of that. But okay, for the sake of our listeners here, I just posted in the chat 2 screenshots of promotional posters for the 2 movies we're selecting from today. The first option is from the year 2017. It is called First Reformed, a film starring Ethan Hawke, directed by the great Paul Schrader, who is one of my favorite directors. I'm reluctant to say he's my favorite just because I don't like saying favorites of anything. But I really, really enjoy his filmmaking. And the cool thing about First Reformed is it's the first in a trilogy, an informal trilogy of contemporary films that he's made that all kind of deal with similar themes that he's explored over the course of his career, but that First Reformed is widely agreed upon by many critics to be kind of his magnum opus, aside from Taxi Driver, of course, which he wrote in the mid 70s. So that is the first one. It deals with men of faith whose faith is tested in a very profound way in our contemporary world, our contemporary setting. And I think it'll resonate for a lot of us listeners and viewers as we contend with some of the existential challenges of our time. So a little bit more of a modern movie with the first selection. Was not nominated for Best Picture, but was nominated for Best Screenplay, which I think may appeal to some of our writer co-hosts here, hopefully. The second option is a movie called Paris, Texas, and it is from the early 80s. The exact year escapes me. But when it came out, it was a darling of the indie movie scene. It was directed by a wonderful German filmmaker who is still releasing movies. It's a beautifully shot movie, gorgeous, and it deals with regret, redemption. It's got a slow build, but it's really very thoughtful movie. And man, when it hits its stride and it deals with the crux, the main theme of the film, it hits you like a ton of bricks. I was kind of slack-jawed the first time I saw it. Have to thank my good friend Sam from Scotland for initially recommending Paris, Texas to me a number of years ago. Great guy. Met him when his family was vacationing in Florida. We maintained a friendship over movies. Just saw them in Scotland last summer. So thank you, Sam. This movie is an option because of you. But yeah, I hesitate to talk any more about the movies because, as I say, I have a tendency to overshare when I get excited about a piece of media. So would love to get your guys' kind of reactions here, hear your thoughts, and ultimately your pick for today.
Well, my immediate first thought, based on the images that you chose for these posters, is we're getting a little bit of a Barbenheimer vibe from this.
Oh, good point. Yeah.
So I'm sure the tones of those do not align with the movies necessarily from that summer. But I don't know anything about either of these movies, so I'm open to whichever. I do love Ethan Hawke, and as someone who tends to care a little bit more about story than visuals in general, that's where I have the slightest of leans towards First Reform, but that is a very light, like I'm basing this basically on air. There's very flimsy reasons to lean, so I'm open to either.
Sarah saw Ethan Hawke and was like sold.
Okay, yeah. So that's 2 for Ethan Hawke.
But can be easily swayed if Chrysantha comes through with a strong opinion.
Like I said, I'm perfectly happy to watch either, so I don't feel like I have
that's
a horse
where
in the
I'm at
race.
too.
Okay, I have actually seen Paris, Texas.
Oh.
Okay.
And
Okay, then let's do the Ethan Hawke one then.
spectacular. But I would like to see First Reform because I'm obsessed with American Gigolo, which Paul Schrader also directed.
Oh, that was another one that was on my mind as an option today.
Oh my God, it's so good.
Me too. That opening sequence and everything about that movie.
Everything that Richard Gere's dressed in that movie is incredible.
He's so cool.
You said Richard Gere, and now I'm just like, is that, what is it? Pretty Woman told from the opposite
Kind of.
Kind of, yeah. I know.
And okay, it was meant to be. Okay, now like your movie picks in this discussion is making me be like, have I seen movies? Like these all seem like they'd be really good, but
Well, we are stuck in the 1930s for now, but there will come a point where we get to the golden age of American cinema in the 70s and early 80s. But
I was about to say, the 70s, right?
Yeah.
I feel like the late 60s, early 80s.
Yeah, that's the time period.
Is the era I'm kind of like missing a little bit.
Very
I've seen
excited.
very few from that time, but definitely, not to think about it as the like hailed golden era of cinema.
Yeah, I feel like I just started watching late 60s, early 70s movies like as an adult, and they're all fucking great.
They're so
Nice.
good. There's everybody's like kind of fucked up looking, and like when there's violence, it's like it hits you because it's so like visceral, and you can see they like built it out. There's no CGI, and it's like I don't know. It's such a great dark kind of mean hungover time period, but also some very heartwarming stuff too. I don't mean to paint with a broad brush, but I just love that time period, and I can't wait to live vicariously through Sarah and Chrysantha.
to some extent when we get there. But okay, it sounds like the consensus today is First Reformed,
Cool.
which is all good in my book. And Abby, I hope you enjoyed Paris, Texas. Maybe we can talk about it at some point. Maybe it'll appear
Heck yeah.
again in the future in our discussions of possible movies. But sounds good. Okay, so First Reformed is on Netflix. And I am mortal enemies with Netflix now because they screwed me over with my account a couple years ago. So one of you guys, we're gonna have to do a little behind the scenes movie magic to make it happen with all of us watching it. But we're gonna bounce off now, watch Paul Schrader's 2017, dare I say, masterpiece, First Reformed. And what will feel like an instant, we'll be back to talk with the rest of you about it. Happy birthday to me.
Yay!
Yeah.
Happy birthday!
You need a
I also
little
just
like,
brr, noisemaker sound.
Yeah, exactly. I also just like how for your birthday you chose something that you do not have access to.
It was like, this is the perfect opportunity to use someone else's Netflix account.
To rewatch First Reformed.
All right. Well, welcome back, everyone, to Lights, Camera, Accolade, the Jake 34th birthday extravaganza.
Oh,
Was trying to
Taking
do a
some
little
years off
swindle
there.
on you guys there.
Dodsworth behavior.
We just got back from watching a very uplifting movie called First Reformed from Paul Schrader. Just kidding. It's not uplifting at all. It was very heavy. Listeners will probably remember from episodes so far, I tend to have a soft spot in my heart for like feel-good movies. Well, I decided to do something different today for my birthday, so I'm excited to hear what everybody thinks about it. But first, as always, I'm going to give everybody a little breezy overview of the film, and I do want to put out there, I really like this movie. If you've never seen it before, I do strongly recommend taking a look at it. But spoiler warning done. First Reformed opens up on a priest in a Protestant church in rural New York. First Reformed Church. It is a church that is 250 years old, presumably one of the oldest churches in the country. And it's not very widely attended. It's kind of a dead church. People joke about it being more of a souvenir shop or a museum than a church at this point. And it is run by Reverend Toller, who is played by the great Ethan Hawke, we all know and love. The movie opens on what seems like a normal Sunday, sparsely attended mass. When everyone is leaving, a young woman named Mary, played by Amanda Siegfried, says, she enjoyed the sermon, but she's going through some difficulty, her and her husband, who's with her, and he's standing kind of afar awkwardly. She feels that he would really benefit from Reverend Toller taking some time to meet with him and speak with him about what he's going through. Ethan Hawke offers to meet with him, of course. So we jump ahead another day. He goes over to Mary and her husband Michael's house, has a very intense conversation, almost therapy session with Michael. And it comes out that Michael is a very hardcore environmentalist, even served jail time in Canada, recently got out. Mary is trying to help him basically be a little bit more normal and less depressed about environmental concerns because they are about to have a baby. He voices in this conversation with the Reverend all these concerns he has about the near future of the country and the world because of climate change and environmental degradation and the extended problems that will inevitably, we all know by this point, result from that and that we are living through. And he questions the Reverend, who am I to bring a new life into this world? I think this is a question a lot of us in our age group grapple with, given what we know about where everything is headed. And the priest, you got to give him credit, Ethan Hawke. He is quoting from scripture. He is giving life wisdom. He reveals, he's been through some great tragedy and struggle in his own life. Specifically, he was a military man, as was tradition in his family, and he encouraged his own son to join the military some years before, and his son was killed in the Iraq War. So obviously the Reverend felt great guilt over that. His wife left him that was when ultimately he decided to join the church. So he's trying to really encourage Michael, tell him to trust in himself and what he can control right around him, and offers to continue to meet with him. But the Reverend, through his narration to the audience, because there is a running narration throughout the movie, he explains that his own faith is somewhat shaken, and he's also exhilarated by the conversation that he's had with this young man who seems to care so much about the world but doesn't know what to do with that care. So we jump ahead a little bit. He cannot meet with Michael the next day because Michael gets called into work. So he's going to have to postpone that meeting to the following day. But he gets kind of a worried message from Mary over the phone saying to come over. Well, he does so, and Mary brings him to the shed where Michael has been working on a regular basis, supposedly on a car engine. But she reveals in a box that she discovered a suicide vest that her husband, Michael, has been building. So it becomes very clear to both her and the Reverend at that point that Michael's depression, angst over the state of the world has now evolved to a point where he's thinking of committing some type of violent or destructive act, and obviously suicide as a result of that. So the Reverend, rather than going to the police, he takes the vest. He tells Mary, not to worry. He's going to talk with Michael. They're going to figure this thing out, and leaves. Well, the next day, we see the Reverend talking with the big head of the church. This little First Reformed church is actually now an offshoot of a big evangelical church, sort of mega church. He meets with Esther, choir director in the church, who he had a past romantic dalliance with, but is not interested in continuing that. She's someone that cares a great deal about him and knows that he's struggling because he's going through some health issues. He's refusing to kind of follow up on it. She's encouraging him to do that, but he's very much pushing her away from that. He's a very kind of isolated, lone man. He also meets with the head of the megachurch, played by Cedric the Entertainer, and they are having a big celebration at First Reformed because it is coming up on the 250-year anniversary of its opening. So they're going to be hosting the governor, the mayor, and most importantly, the big bankroller of the Abundant Life Church, Mr. Edward Bulk, the CEO of Bulk Industries. He's weighing the responsibilities of that when he gets another message to meet with Michael. This time, strangely, Michael asks him to meet kind of in the woods off the main road. He goes to meet with Michael. He walks down the trail, and to his horror, he discovers Michael's body next to a shotgun with large portion of his head blown off. He has committed suicide. So Tulliver calls the police. The police arrive. They go with the police, and he and a police officer break the news to Mary. So Tulliver tries to console Mary. They speak over their grief. He begins to examine Michael's materials that he's left behind, his computer. He leaves a last will and testament as well. So they hold a funeral for Michael where they scatter his ashes in a waste disposal site associated with Bulk Industries locally. Well, the Reverend starts to dig into some of these concerns and thoughts that were driving Michael's behavior and his depression. He starts to search and learn more about climate change generally, and also about some of the perpetrators and industries directly related to perpetrating it, including Bulk Industries, the major company that's such a big part of financing their church. This starts to really tug at the Reverend's moral strings and make him question, what is the church's role? Why are we a part of this? But things kind of boil over at a meeting with Edward Bulk, who is the main funder of this big celebration of the church's anniversary. He throws down on the table during their lunch a newspaper clipping of the funeral that was held at the waste disposal site associated with his company. He points out that obviously this is very bad publicity, and he does not want any kind of political concerns or discussion associated with this big up-and-coming event. He's very condescending and disrespectful to the Reverend, pointing out, I know about this gentleman who killed himself, and I know that you were counseling him, and says in so many words, obviously you didn't do a good job of that. Well, Tulliver continues to kind of withdraw in on himself. He's drinking very heavily, had always been a drinker, but now is drinking basically constantly, which is only exacerbating his health issues. He finally does go to get some tests done, and it becomes clear that he has some form of cancer. So they schedule serious follow-up tests to learn the extent of it and whether there will be options for treatment. And obviously this is continuing to weigh on the Reverend as well. The Reverend continues to find some solace in his conversations with Mary as she is dealing with her grief over the loss of Michael. And she even comes to meet the Reverend out of the blue one night in the Reverend's home. It's clear he's had a bit too much to drink at this point, but is still doing his best to console her in what she's going through. She starts to talk about something that used to help her in the past when Michael was alive, called the Magical Mystery Tour, which is kind of this cute, intimate moment that her and Michael would share where they would lie on top of one another, try to synchronize their movements and their breathing, stare into each other's eyes, and have a kind of transcendental experience. Well, the Reverend offers to do this with Mary, who again at this point is visibly pregnant, a much younger woman than him. And at first she's kind of coyly says, "Oh no," but then she says, "Okay, let's try it." So the Reverend lies on the floor. Mary lies on top of him. It's a very kind of slow, sensual, but not sexual scene where they form, a deep connection. And we actually see a kind of meta real thing transpire where they begin to float off the ground, and they seem to be traveling over all these beautiful natural landscapes for a while anyway, until the Reverend kind of looks away from Mary and he starts to see in his mind's eye all this pollution and destruction and the degradation of the planet. So we jump ahead again. The head of the megachurch is getting very concerned. Word has now broken that the Reverend is quite ill. Esther tries to have a heart-to-heart with him, say, "Let me help you." And the Reverend brusquely and meanly tells her he despises her. "Get away. I don't want to have a romantic relationship with you. You are a stumbling block to what I'm going through." So she is broken by that. And he challenges the head of the megachurch, saying, "What is our purpose in society if not to protect the planet, if not to safeguard the future for human beings, God's creation, the beauty of the world, and yet here we are in bed with this major polluter and we're doing nothing about it." Well, the megachurch leader tells him, "You're not living in reality. They're ministering to people, but they also have to maintain these financial ties to all these different special interests." He tells the Reverend, "Get your shit together, essentially. We have this big event coming up in a few days. If we get through this, we will help you afterwards. We'll send you to rehab, support you through your health crisis, whatever it takes." So the big day arrives. It's become clear by this point, or although clear to some of our viewers today in advance. It took me a while to catch on the first time I watched it. But the Reverend has by this point become so inflamed and engrossed in this climate change material and his own guilt for his church's involvement in it, even indirectly, that he's opted to utilize the suicide vest that Michael has created to detonate himself during this event, which will again be hosting in the front row CEO Bulk of Bulk Industries, the governor, the mayor, other well-to-do people in the church. Will be very publicized. The Reverend views this as an opportunity to finally take a stand. So he's strapping the vest on. He's looking out the window at people arriving when he sees that Mary has arrived as well, even though he stressed to her, "Don't come to the congregation. You have to go be with your sister in Buffalo as you deal with your grief," because he was trying to protect her. Obviously, this disrupts his plan. He does not want to detonate himself in a room that could harm her. So he's kind of in a fit, takes off the vest. He darts off into a room kind of grunting in pain and anguish. And he takes out both a bottle of Drano, some type of heavy cleaning material, and a roll of barbed wire. And almost in a Christ-like masochistic act of self-violence and pain, he very gruesomely, and we see it on camera, wraps this wire around his bare body, bleeding profusely from his body. You can see the pain on his face. And then he dons his priest's garb. He picks up a glass of liquor off the table. Rather than drinking it, he scatters it to the floor, and he begins to pour the bleach, this cleaning material, into the glass. Well, he's about to drink it to kill himself when he hears behind him someone enter the room, and he turns to see Mary. Over all this, you hear the church choir singing from the church. Mary rushes in. He drops the glass. They embrace one another, first as a hug, which evolves into a kiss. The camera pans very dramatically around them for an extended period as we hear this gospel music being sung. The movie comes to an end, and we're left to wonder, what does it all mean? And so I ask you guys, what do you feel about First Reformed?
Who wants to go first? Okay, so first of all, loved it. I don't know if any of y'all have read The Sun Also Rises, there's a famous Hemingway quote from that. In the context, the character is being asked like how he went bankrupt, and his response is gradually, then suddenly. And so like that, I feel like applies to so many things because that really is just the fact of everything good and bad, but largely in the context of this film, a lot of those insidious sort of things that we bury our head in the sand about is they creep up, and then at a certain point it feels too late to really do anything, where in retrospect you can kind of see all of these off ramps, you know, that could have changed things. So in this movie it felt like obviously climate change is a big heavy topic in this, but also Reverend Toller's like social isolation, the way that he deals with his cancer as well. Like it's all of these things that just get put aside while they destroy, you know, various aspects of life, both, you know, climate change globally for people, cancer individually, and then social isolation, I feel like emotionally. So that felt like just a big theme or reflection of the movie for me. But yeah, I really liked it.
Yeah, agreeing with Sarah. I think this movie's fantastic. It's what I hoped it would be. You know, just knowing the director stuff and knowing a teeny tiny bit of what the movie was supposed to be about. I was like, hell yeah, I'm here for this. Yeah, I think that whole like thematic thing of like people destroying the planet and also Toller kind of like destroying himself, whether it's by like not taking his disease seriously or like, you know, drinking endless amounts of whiskey. That's really fascinating. I love how thoughtful the frame is in this, and like everything that is in the frame, like every image in this is really beautifully composed. It's in that really interesting kind of like squared off ratio, but B, like every single like bit of text in there is really great. There's a really interesting thing that happens every time a person who is in the role of like a pastor or someone who is, you know, trying to reach out to some other person, but like specifically in the role of like a faith minister, the camera like jogs up just a teeny tiny bit. So like it's looking very slightly down on them. Like happens with Toller, and at first I was like, oh, this is interesting because like he's clearly kind of falling apart. But it also happens with the pastor of the megachurch too. So anytime someone is trying to like minister to someone, it has this like looking just slightly down on that person, not the person they're ministering to, like the person doing it. So it's almost like, I mean, you know, this is me pulling bullshit film stuff out, but like,
love it.
You know,
not something I
like
picked up on.
God or religion or the universe or whatever, like looking down at that person. And is it looking down at them in a derogatory way, or is it like trying to like move through them? It's very interesting. Love it.
Oh, I gotta watch it again.
Right. I feel like even that lamp that looks like an eye. Yeah. So I feel like you're onto something in terms of that sort of perspective, right? Being given to everything from something outside of themselves potentially.
And I think
that's super. This is why I need people to explain a lot of cinematography things to me. It's like, what?
Four heads are better than
And I think too, like that ties into a really interesting thing of like, you know, First Reformed, it's clearly like referencing the Protestant Reformation and that weird thing of like the Catholic Church of being a thing that is like a structure. So the thing that is in Catholicism that's important is both like the scripture and the hierarchical structure of the church. Like those are two like arms of God basically. And then Protestantism denies that and says that the only thing that matters is the scripture. And like the whole thing is this
relationship.
Yeah. And then you have the Calvinists, which just are crazy. But
which Paul Schrader was raised in a strict Calvinist household and actually
doesn't surprise me. Like that whole concept of predestination and people who are only created to be damned.
Yes.
And that whole like concept is also living in here of, you know, what free will is and like how we exist in the hierarchy of the church or not, and like whether that gets in the way of things in terms of like how you're relating to God and people and that kind of thing. Very fascinating. Love it.
Oh, those are such good points and things that I hadn't even considered. I didn't think we were already going to start shitting on Protestantism in relation to Catholicism, but I will have that conversation every day. But Chrysantha, before I start, I want to hear what you think. No pressure.
I don't know. I'm not going to say like it like was amazing to me, but I didn't dislike it either. Like I'm kind of like in the middle. It definitely held my attention enough and like intrigued me enough to I guess, analyze it. It asks important questions and it makes you think. So I think in that regard, like it is an intellectual movie. I mean, I think that's the whole reason why it was made, to challenge certain beliefs or certain thoughts, especially involving, you know, theology and the way we as humans or just society, how certain things are being run or moved. I mean, I don't know a lot about theology. I don't know much about religion in general. Like when I was watching it, the main, I guess, overarching things that I got from it, at least from my interpretation, was more of like a battle, I guess. I don't even want to say a battle, but like just two opposing sides or perspectives between like hope and despair.
Yeah.
So like even though like with Ethan Hawke and like how the story unfolds, like it starts off normal, like how pretty much everyone lives their lives, where it's kind of like, okay, you're aware of these bad things happening. I guess almost kind of like a state of willful ignorance in a way. But as he starts counseling the husband, it kind of wakes him up a little bit more, and then he gets radicalized. But I saw that more as him being, it's not that he was completely blind to it, but he still had kind of like, in a way, hope. And I feel like as the movie progresses, the suicide of the husband starts weighing on him more, especially given his previous trauma with his own son and probably the guilt and shame that he has around that. I feel like the suicide of the husband, someone he was asked to help, you know, I'm pretty sure that kind of weighed on him. So I feel like as the movie progresses, like he kind of succumbs to that despair and he ends up repeating the same pattern that the husband was in. And so the fact that like with every scene with Amanda Seyfried, that was usually the only time where he was a little bit happy, where he was like smiling, engaging, instead of being like isolated in his own world and his own thoughts and just depressed in general. And so like that moment when they're like floating, for me, like that floating scene, and then even the way the movie ended, I kind of interpreted that as being more of like he succumbed to despair. I mean, even Amanda Seyfried's character, she alluded to her being part of the activism and aware of all this stuff that's happening, but she wasn't engulfed by it, because I honestly think her character was just the personification of hope. I mean, she was literally growing life and was going to bring the future into the world.
Like literally named Mary.
And so I think in the end, when Ethan Hawke's character is about to commit suicide by doing, you know, trying to blow everyone up in the church as well as himself, as an act of like protest or even martyrdom. And then when she appears, it's kind of like, and this is just me projecting my own, I guess, experiences. Like when you're really depressed and you do go through those spirals and then you're like way down in the bottom, but then like just something deep down is like a little ray of like sunshine. It's not that it throws off everything, but it's more like a reminder. And with him, obviously he's mad because he had this whole plan. He was going to do something and maybe elicit change or feel like he's making a change, you know, for the environment. And it doesn't end up going that way because he doesn't want her to die. And with him putting the barbed wire on himself, I still don't really understand it, but it's like a half-baked idea or a thought of him being like, okay, well, if I can't bring everybody and the world down with me, I'm going to try to inflict pain on myself for whatever shame that I have, because sometimes feeling physical pain is a lot more bearable than the emotional or psychological guilt or feelings. But then at the same time too, when he decides to drink the Drano, for me, I was like, okay, so he's not going to bring everyone down. He's just going to leave the world because it's too much despair to continue to go on. But then when he sees her in the doorway and then he drops the glass, it's kind of like, and this is like a very optimistic way of looking at it, but like embracing, okay, there's something more. Like there's a lot of shit in the world and there's a lot of stuff that we can't control, which is basically what he was telling the husband in the beginning. But there are still moments of beauty, which is also my interpretation with the whole floating, and there's like that beautiful scenery in the background, but as soon as he opens his eyes, it completely turns into the pollution that's happening in the world, and it ruins that moment that they were sharing together, because like he's just so obsessed or engulfed with this despair of whether it's like the guilt of his son, the guilt and the shame that like came with the husband committing suicide, or
knowledge of his mortality.
that too, the sickness. And then with everything, when he discovered that the husband was researching about the environment and how, like, even though there's so much activism, like, there's only so much we can do, because ultimately, like, there's only so much power, so much control we can have, and so I don't know, it's kind of like my interpretation of it. It was really good. Like, I think it's really good intellectually, and it's cool to hear everyone's takes on it, but it is a very bleak film. So I wouldn't recommend watching it if you're in a bad headspace.
Especially, okay, so you talking about this chrysanthemum and like that ending moment and kind of the moment of levitation and kind of like the two moments in this film where like the locked off camera like relaxes and like moves it all, right? Like talking about how those are like moments of beauty and that are interrupted by us like opening our eyes and looking around us, basically, right? I think too, like there's that thing of not only is it a moment of beauty that we have to like close our eyes to look at, but the question too of like, we have to have faith of, does that exist? Or is it just something that we're creating because we want it to exist? Like, I don't know. Does that end scene actually happen? I don't know. Cause like there's so much like the door was locked when the other reverend went to go look for him, but suddenly Mary can come through it, and the like
barbed wire no longer hurts him. While they're like literally embracing and stuff.
Yeah, it's like it's the only scene in the movie that isn't kind of like has that really like realistic soundscape, like no footsteps or anything like that as they cross the room.
Yeah, that is
so
true.
Your
That's
contention that it could be almost like a death throes.
Yeah, it's his
imagination.
dying thoughts.
I don't know. I think the uncertainty is like the point of not knowing, right?
Right. I think it's purposely ambiguous, which I do like, but I also think that it directly reflects back on his journal entry when he was thinking about like what Michael's last thoughts before death were, right? And as for like the barbed wire and that really grisly way to commit suicide, to me, some of that seemed like a reflection of things within his own faith, right? So when you think about the trials and tribulations that Jesus went through prior to being crucified on the cross, it was like the lashes, his body was fully ripped up by barbs. And so I think the barbed wire is partially that, but also partially like if you think back to when he found it in the first place, it was like literal trash on his property that had killed an innocent life.
Oh
right?
my God.
And so
wow. I'm learning so much from you guys.
So I think also, it parallels that scene, except with him, especially because then he put on the white instead of his like black other stuff that he was wearing. So you can not only see the blood through it, but it also reflects back to the song that choir was singing that Chrysanthemum mentioned, like, this is dark, where they're like, bathe in the blood of the lamb, wear white. So I think there are a lot of connections to things that we've seen there, but I'm really glad you mentioned hope and despair, because they mentioned that early in that first conversation with the husband. And I feel like that frames the movie so well between those two counterpoints. And I don't often notice sound design or cinematography, but I was happy to at least pick up on during that first conversation that they're having, where the husband is talking about really not wanting to bring a life into the world when, by 2050, which was only 25 years away, but it's fine. All of these terrible things are projected to happen on the path that we're on. Throughout that whole conversation, in the background, you can hear kids playing, like the sound of neighborhood kids laughing and playing. So I was just like, that's a cool little detail there. So I was just happy to have noticed that sound. I didn't really pick up on the footsteps.
I didn't pick up on the kids playing or the sound in the last scene, but that does make sense because the door was locked. And I guess it also, and this is gonna sound mean or harsh, but in the beginning, like when he was counseling the husband and the husband was just talking about nothing but despair and like, what's the point in bringing life if in 2050 it's not gonna be worth it and all that stuff, right? He always would have a rebuttal to something that the reverend would say. And so like in that moment, I felt like it was kind of like, who's gonna win? Like you're watching like kind of like a debate in a way, but not really. I love that scene. But I'm really harsh with myself. But sometimes like when I'm really low and I start getting in those thoughts of really deep, dark despair, and I'm kind of doing that same thing to myself where I'm kind of like trying to pick myself up. But then there's that other part of me that's just kind of like rebuttaling that same way. And in my mind in that scene, the husband was basically alluding alluding to, like he was gonna kill himself, you know, like if it's so dark, you know, why bring a life in? If there is no hope, then death is the only escape. It's interesting in the way the movie explores it too, like how it just lingers. And in that ending scene, I guess it could kind of be interpreted with him being like he drinks the Drano, and then he does have, I guess, I don't know if it's like he's in heaven or he finally is, there's some sort of peace, because I guess like throughout the movie he really only had a little bit of happiness when he was helping the wife go through this. Like it's kind of like bittersweet, I guess. Like maybe he did die, but at the end of the day, like it's still like a release of, or like a reminder of like, hey, there is something still good. It's just a matter of like what you choose to focus in on. But like, I didn't even remember that, like with the door being locked, or
yeah, that's such a good
what do you call it?
Oh, so you took it kind of literally with it, which again, it's meant to be ambiguous.
Yeah, because I remember thinking with the barbed wire, like he put it on, but then when she was embracing him, because I thought that he still had it on, but then when she was embracing
again, like,
him, yeah, I was like, isn't it hurting her
the baby
too?
goes
And
through a
I was
lot.
like,
It's getting crushed. It's getting stabbed.
But yeah, I don't know. Maybe it's worth another watch, because when it comes to like sound, I feel like when you're trying to send a message or like create some kind of like, I guess like explanation, like beyond just the visuals, even paying attention to the sound. And I don't feel like I paid a lot of attention to the sound that was happening.
I didn't all the time, but it did have good sound design, because just the sound of the footsteps on wood in his home throughout so many scenes was just like so familiar and so
isolation.
real. Like the isolation, where it's just like you can tell that room is empty and those floors are old, and he's wearing something that has like a hard heel.
Yeah.
You know, like you can just hear all of those little details. But yeah, I do think with the ending scene, whichever way you take it, whether like literal or his dying thoughts or whatever else, I think it is meaningful, to your point, Chrysantha, that there was kind of that more like blissfulness associated with it, that like happiness and some hope and light surrounding all of that. So whether that's just like him finally getting to experience some of that as he dies, or if it's a post-death or whatever, because I think one of the conversations that he's having with the pastor of the megachurch, when he calls him out for being like, you're always in the garden, you know, the Garden of Gethsemane, right? Always the darkest hour with you, where it's just like, okay, not everything has to be that way. And it's a good reminder, because it's like, even though there are very serious things where it's like, yeah, you could very easily focus on the things that make all day, every day seem like the darkest hour. It's not necessarily like a negative thing to also focus on the beauty and the joy and the hope, you know, much to Amanda Seyfried's character in all of that. It just, obviously, it feels very shallow coming from the pastor of a megachurch, you know, so, which is also like, you know, an interesting point on that. So it's really hard to take even like the correct messages when coming from the mouths of people who are like the biggest hypocrites, you know, like he needs to take a page out of Reverend Toller's book a little bit, at least, and actually care about the impact of
what's happening.
all of these things.
Yeah. I like, to that point, I love like how much of every character has something, except for maybe like Mary, kind of has stuff that they're like borrowing or temporarily like taking on these traits to like make whatever point, or like try and find meaning in their life or whatever. I love that scene where Toller and the woman from the choir, Esther, they're sitting in the like mega church's cafeteria, and he's drinking out of the cup, and they're sitting in front of this Bible verse that's like, you know, about basically like sell your possessions and be together in communion with God. And then on the bottom of the cup, there's a fucking price tag on it. Like, it's so good. But like, too, like Toller also spends the whole movie like borrowing other people's like how you believe in things, or how you are like fulfill yourself as a person. Like on his bedside table at the beginning of the movie, there's a Thomas Merton book, which Thomas Merton was like famously, I think he was a Trappist monk who wrote like a shit ton of stuff, who like was all about his like relationship with God and like theology and that kind of thing. But he was also kind of like a Christian anarchist, but he like famous for journaling, which is what Toller does the entire time in the movie. And then also he's borrowing to like this whole cause from the guy who counseled and killed himself, right? So it's like all of this borrowing and
searching.
Like even the mega church guy does it too, where it's like kind of borrowing the vestments of what a Christian should be, or, you know, theoretically should be, and kind of like recycling that through this weird structure of but we do have a cafeteria in our church. So
That's true. That's a very good point. Like, I didn't pick up on the adopting other people's ideas or like, I guess, ways of living. But I guess that's inherent with, and I'm sorry if you're a listener who's very religious, but like with being religious is like you're being told to follow
you're looking
that
for guidance.
Yeah. But that's a very good point.
And I think we all do it to a certain extent, right? But
yeah, I think that's part of just like social connections is you're all kind of like sharing to some extent aspects of your personality or your beliefs, even podcasting, right? We're all sharing ideas about this.
We're all
and
just
we might
teens
come away
in a youth group who need to
exactly.
That was a good scene too.
I love the youth group's leader like script bicep tattoos that say faith
Yeah.
and
Oh my
redemption.
God,
I knew that guy.
Incredible.
So big,
I knew that guy.
eye rolling thing.
Did you really?
No, I mean, just
Well, not that exactly,
that
but there's
type
so
of
many
guy.
people like that. Yeah, that type of person. Yeah, there's a lot of familiarity there. But yeah, I think we're all an amalgamation of the people that we come across in life.
Exactly.
I will say, the one thing that, because of course, you know me, I like unambiguously dark endings. I was like, okay, I see it, I like it, I respect it, but I definitely kind of wanted the potential like intensity of what the scene would be like if he did go deliver whatever his message was while wearing the vest. Like, what were people's reactions going to be, especially because the CEO of Bulk Industry was there, and there's that part of me, right, who's like, man, he's about to be the original Luigi, you know? But, you know, we don't get that because that's not what it's about. But there was definitely that part of me, not necessarily, because I didn't think he would be successful in that, like, self-suicide bombing. I thought, like, okay, if he goes out there, he'll be stopped somehow, like something will happen, right, in a way that he's not able to fulfill what he wants to fulfill. But then when he sees Amanda Seyfried walk into the church, then I was like, oh, okay, is he either not going to do it, or is this going to be like really dark where she kind of becomes the sacrificial lamb in this? And I was like, oh my God, this is going to be a little dark even for me. But then they went the other direction. So I don't know. I think there was a lot of potential for different ways for this to play out, but ultimately it was about his own journey through a lot of these things rather than like a bigger, I guess, narrative arc. But
I think that's a
could
good.
have happened. Could have been cool.
Yeah, and I know that that's your personality, and you would have liked to seen all those bodies splattered over the floor in the church.
No,
I
don't.
I'm just kidding.
I'm not here for the
No,
gore.
not
I'm
the
here.
gore
I'm
element,
here for
but-
the like. What does it
the-
mean?
the
What
challenge.
does it mean?
Yeah,
You know.
yeah. No, I think this is a good opportunity to circle it back to something that Chrysanthus said before that sparked my thinking. But before I do, I just want to say, you know, this is why I love movies. And this conversation I'm having with the three of you guys, each of you are making points and bringing up elements to this film, which I've seen several times, which never even registered to me.
Several times.
Wow.
This is a dark movie. This is
Yeah.
like a heavy
My-
movie to
I love
watch.
it. I want to watch this movie several times.
This is my third time watching it, but I just want to thank you guys for that because it's really enlightening to hear these perspectives and fulfilling, and it reminds me of why we're doing this. It's a good birthday present. But Chrysantha, when you said a moment ago, why does he wrap himself in the wire? And I think this really speaks to what this movie is all about. Or to some extent, or one interpretation of it, which is that tug and pull, like you're saying, between hope and despair. And ultimately, the propensity, which Schrader hits on a lot in a lot of his films, towards self destruction in the face of the powerlessness of existence, I think, for any human, but in particular, I think there's a gendered element as well for males in contemporary society of that knowledge that there's all these things that are outside of your control. And in many ways, we're cultured to think that we're entitled to some level of control over our lives. We're entitled to, you know, where we see wrongs, make right and take action. And it just feels like that is not possible a lot of days.
And I think it genuinely drives a lot of people crazy. It's maddening to think about the fact that were I to bring a child into this world, it almost definitely will have a more difficult material life than myself. And that's emasculating from a gendered perspective, but it's despair inducing from any perspective. And so you can take that realization and that knowledge to some really dark places, particularly if you cut yourself off from all other people and you're self-medicating and you're just doom scrolling and you're getting into these niche topics and even make that final leap toward violent acts against other people who is not going to change anything systemically. It might give you that release in the moment of self-annihilation, but are you going to stop climate change? And how can we? And what can we do? We have to be together. And that is, to me, what his dynamic with Mary is all about throughout the movie. And even other people who try to give him a hand up, which he rejects, but it's her because I think that she is the earthiest person in the movie. She's the most tethered to the earth. She was involved in the environmental movement, but she didn't get radicalized. She has, as you point out, this life growing inside of her. She is humanity encapsulated in a single person. She's also a female, which I personally believe is a little bit more plugged into reality and the earth than a lot of us males can sometimes be. Not to make everything gendered about this, but I know Schrader takes that stuff seriously. And it's those glimpses of those when he locks eyes with her that, as you guys pointed out, he's able to see the beauty of life, even if it's just fleeting, and that there's salvation in that. So I personally prefer to believe, because I'm a little bit more of an optimistic person, that exchange at the very end was real. Although I that's such a good point, Abby, and I'm going to be thinking about that now. But I prefer to think that exchange, even if it didn't happen for real, you can make the case that seeing that was a manifestation of his surrendering to that, really absolution of that, of being with another human being in whatever capacity. It is those momentary connections with other people that are our salvation, that make living in the moment worthwhile, and that allow you to escape the pain of what has happened in the past and what could happen in the future. You can't ultimately control that. And for me, it's kind of therapeutic in Schrader's movies to see him allow for really dark, isolated people to experience those moments. And this movie has some of the most dramatic instances of that. But that was a big takeaway for me. There's only so much you can control. But when you allow yourself to open up to the people that are around you and you are in the moment, that's the stuff that life is made of. And it's a lot better than self-medicating or being radicalized or whatever. Not to say, those aren't good causes, the environmental movement. But let's face it, what he wanted to do was annihilate himself. And when he discovered this cause that Michael annihilated himself through, it was a vehicle that gave him permission to do so.
I don't think I've seen I think the only other movie by Paul Schrader I've seen is Taxi Driver. This makes me want to watch his other stuff just to get more familiar with his storytelling.
Watch the informal trilogy of this, The Card Counter, and then Master Gardener. They pair like fine wines very great together, and it's kind of an escalation or different interpretations, and each of the three characters, which are basically the same character, they react to similar circumstances in slightly different ways, and it's almost like an exploration of the options on the table. And this one is kind of it's maybe not the bleakest of the three, but it's a good introductory to his whole mythology. But just to talk a little bit about him, he's kind of, I know I was referencing the gender element there. He's kind of like the Pope of simps. Like, he famously posts on Facebook a lot about how much he loves Taylor Swift and has referred to her as like the salvation of humanity.
I love this information
on Earth.
And he's been talking about these kinds of issues going back to the 70s. And he is
really, Paul Schrader's a Swiftie.
He is. I don't know that he listens to any of her music, but just like her persona, he's fascinated by. And it's because I think he feels that feminine, and I might be projecting here too a little bit,
But that feminine connection to the here and now and to life and the earth and nourishment, welfare and communalism is so the opposite side of the coin of many things that I think are biologically and culturally ingrained in those of us on the male side. And society is difficult to navigate in that respect, but women can really help. And I think he kind of touches on that. And I don't mean to set up gender binaries. I know everything is a spectrum and people fall in different places on it. But these traits that we associate with male and female, Schrader is very fascinated by trying to explore the propensity towards self-annihilation that exists on that toxically masculine side. That's touched on here, but also in Taxi Driver, if you remember that movie.
So he was a writer for Taxi Driver.
Yes.
Yeah. He writes a lot
he
with
wrote-
He
with
wrote a
Scorsese.
bunch of Scorsese. Last
okay,
Temptation
so-
of Christ, Bring Out Your Dead.
I've seen Raging Bull
Yes,
as
that's
well. Maybe it's just the headspace that I was in when I saw Raging Bull, because it was a movie that meant a lot to a friend of mine who had recommended it. And I think probably resonated with him in a different way because of the themes that you're talking about.
Yeah.
But I'd be very curious to rewatch it, because I kind of walked away from it being like, yeah, that was a good movie, but I didn't like feel much from it.
It depends on where you are in life. Like, I was fascinated to
Mhm.
watch this having quit drinking because
Yeah.
I see, he's turning away all these people trying to help him and he's getting that temporary relief from that.
Right.
And it's just one more manifestation of self-destruction that, the last 2 times I watched this, I was drunk while I watched it. So it's totally different to watch sober and to see that as
Right.
another element to what he's going through.
Yeah, I do like the path of self-destruction as a theme in things. So I'm like,
Yeah, it
okay,
doesn't have to
I
be
can get behind
gendered.
his stuff.
But like I say, the other 2 of his modern trilogy pair really well with this one. And I think I actually love The Master Gardener. The Master Gardener had a mixed kind of reaction in relation to the other 2, but I personally enjoy watching it the most. And it has to do with the commentary that he's making on this very question.
Well, I'm really glad that you picked this one. I'm sure Paris, Texas is also very good, but this one I feel like got a lot of reflection and kind of wheels turning and stuff. It was very good. And felt, of course, with climate change
Right.
as one of the heavy topics with that, as we are now almost 10 years after this film, where it's just like, it's gotten so much worse. They have officially removed the climate change website from the U.S. government and stuff,
yeah.
and they're defunding all of our... It's fine.
Pedal to the metal, baby. Just live like there's no tomorrow.
Rip the Band-Aid off.
No, that was funny. Every time there'd be a headline in this movie,
It's just
like, can't walk outside without sweat stains all over my body.
Yeah, just how many 100-year, 500-year floods and tornadoes and all of that can we go through in a period? Yeah, in just this year so far. Hurricanes. It's good. It's fun. Okay, well now I'm getting straight. I was leaving this feeling like, okay, solid movie, sad things, but it's a balance. There's beauty in the world. There are good things. There are things to hope for, and we're already here, right? Make the most of it. Try and do good. Try and hope for good changes. Hope for scientists who can like really solve stuff because we need them. But now
There, you
the more
sound
we
like
talk about
Mary.
the stats-
See? She knows.
See?
The women
See?
know. They will help us. They will lead us. They will deliver us. Not your responsibility to do that.
Please fund science. Please fund science. Thank you.
Wow.
Jake, I think it's fascinating that the 2 movies that you suggested that we watch, this and Paris, Texas, I feel like there's so much overlap between these movies.
Exactly. Yeah. That's why I didn't feel like we'd be losing out with either selection.
Yeah, especially that scene where he's standing over the Superfund site and it's got like the purple sky that like slowly lightens, like how it looks and how it is looking at contrasting light and that kind of thing is such a Paris, Texas shot. It's, I see where you're coming from.
Well, there's plenty more birthdays on the horizon before we get done the 100 years of Academy Awards. So Paris, Texas may make an appearance again. You never know.
Ooh.
Well, that was a great discussion. Does anybody else have any final thoughts?
That was
First
really
reform?
good. But I don't want to watch it again, personally.
Give it some time.
But it was very good. Yeah, maybe, in like 10 years or something. It's kind of how I feel about a lot of like The Sopranos or various different things that kind of leave you with a little bit more ennui, or at least for me, I'm like, okay, give it a decade until I revisit that.
Yeah, I was on the fence, but I think after having this discussion,
nice.
I don't know. I don't know if enjoyed's the right word. I enjoyed the intellectual aspect of the story, and
I really enjoyed your
engaged.
interpretation of it, Chrysantha. When you were talking before, it was cool because you're always so matter of fact with your assessment of things. It's something I love about you. Because it's easy to watch this film, right, and get up on a high intellectual horse, but you broke it down matter of factly and were making points that I hadn't considered before. So thank you.
Jake's like, Sarah and Abby, on the other hand, high up on those intellectual horses. Those horses were flying. They are Pegasi.
Pegasi.
I will be talking about the sticker on the bottom of the cup.
I didn't see that. That's important.
I know. I didn't notice that either.
Go back to it. It's great.
I was too busy with the giant biblical text on the wall, as if Schrader could be any less heavy-handed about it.
Right.
I love it. Or like that shot where he's walking across the big, huge like logo of the Abundant Life Church, but it's upside down.
Oh yeah,
perfect.
that one was a good shot. Yeah, I appreciated that one.
Yeah, just love it so much. It's just so meticulous of what is happening on the screen at all times. It's really interesting.
Yeah. And it's crazy to me because I'm always curious how much of that is like written in or decided beforehand. I assume like some of that is going to be part of the screenplay, right? Like Paul walks past the, whatever. But one of the trivia points, because we watched it on Prime, and so when you pause, sometimes it shows you general trivia. So I didn't even have to do research.
Thanks, Jeff Bezos.
App, yeah, exactly. Thanks, Jeff Bezos, actively contributing to the problem in this film.
Jeff Ball.
But apparently the movie was shot in 20 days, and it only had a budget of like $3.5 million. So
yeah, they've got some genius set designer. Someone who really like got what they were going for.
Exactly. So that's why I'm just like even more impressed, being like, wow, okay. Because it was so, as you're saying, meticulous and just like such a kind of tight movie, both script and the different things that they did with like the camera work and the sets. That I'm just like, 20 days? I've been trying to knock out the first thing on my to-do list for 3 times as long almost.
It was a good follow-up to the great Ziegfeld, which felt like they were just had endless money to spend. That one just taking their time.
Yeah. In the middle of the Depression still. So, which is insane. But yeah, no, this was good. I'm glad that you recommended it.
Well, everybody, again, happy birthday to me. And thank you all for joining us. And we will return, as always, with our next iteration of our discussion of old-ass movies. But today was a nice little reprieve with a newer film to talk with you guys about. So I hope you guys enjoyed it. Can't recommend First Reformed enough. And thank you for joining us.